Welcome back to the Motivational Reading Podcast, where we read and review and comment on the latest chapter covered in motivational reading. As a reminder, the blue thumbnails are these types of commentaries, and the red ones are the videos of the audio reading of the chapter we are covering. In this episode, we are covering Part 2, Chapter 5 of How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. In this chapter, we read about principle number 5, talk in terms of the other person's interests. And the title of the chapter starts off with How to Interest People. Mr. Carnegie loves to intertwine real-life stories, especially real-life stories from some of his course students in the past, inside of this book, to give real-life examples of people who had actually applied some of these principles and had success in them. This story in this chapter, this is one of 3 or 4 stories that was actually in the chapter, was what I call the baking firm story. It's about Mr. Duvernay, who had been trying to sell bread to a certain New York hotel for about 4 years. And he tried several methods. He kept trying to get time with the hotel manager, and to no avail. Even after trying several methods like staying in some of the best suites of the hotel, he never was able to get a meeting with that hotel manager. Then, after taking a course on human relations, Mr. Duvernay decided on a new approach. He searched out to find what that manager was interested in. And he found that he was the president of Hotel Greeters of America, a social organization. So the next time he met the hotel manager, he asked him about that society. And in fact, what happened was it led to a very lengthy and enthusiastic conversation. And throughout the whole time, not one mention was made about the bread that Mr. Duvernay had been trying to sell to the hotel. However, a few days later, Mr. Duvernay got a call from the hotel steward to bring in samples of his firm's bread. Why did the hotel manager decide to invite Mr. Duvernay with product samples? Mr. Duvernay had said nothing about what he wanted. And yet, he got a call from the hotel steward to come in to the hotel with samples of his bread. This is a direct quote in the book from what Mr. Duvernay had told Mr. Carnegie. Think of it. I had been drumming at that man for 4 years trying to get his business, and I'd still be drumming at him if I hadn't finally taken the trouble to find out what he was interested in and what he enjoyed talking about. So I'm just wondering, what do you all think? Do you think that this example with Mr. Duvernay would work with you? With your colleagues, with your spouse, with your friends? Do you think if you were to talk in terms of their interests, that you would become more likable, more approachable, people would listen to you more? What do you think are some of the positive outcomes that happen from talking in terms of others' interests? How do you actually try to talk in terms of others' interests? I mean, have you ever tried it before? Is this something normally you do? Or have you given it a try in the past? Or have you just accidentally done it and had some type of success with it? Here are 3 different examples that I've used, and let me just go over those for you. Number 1, keeping track of people's vacations and life events and their ongoings. This is something I naturally do. I'll try to take a note to remember people's animals' names, especially if I've met their animals. If there's someone is saying that they're going on a vacation, I'll usually ask them in advance where they went, and when they come back, ask them, so how was Guatemala? How was Belize? How was Hawaii? And maybe try to look up something to talk to them about regarding that. Number 2, this is something I also naturally do. especially because it helps me out for learning on my own, learning for educational purposes to learn more about my job or my organization's job or the people who I'm managing their jobs. So on the job, that's how I start off here for number 2. This is really just job related. Asking the subject matter experts about their field of expertise, and I really listen with purpose, right? So if I'm asking someone how to install a network server, I'm asking them because I really want to know how they're doing it. Maybe it's because I'm going to be doing a financial analysis and need to understand the benefits of installing a brand new set of server racks in a particular warehouse versus having a third party do it. If I were to approach someone like that, right, that sounds quite boring, right? And no one really wants to go off and explain their job for someone doing a financial analysis. But if you were able to strike up a conversation with the person and say, hey, I heard that you're really good at what you've been doing here in the server warehouse. You've been here for, I think, 10 years is what I've heard. Could you tell me a little bit about what you do? And then go into specifics as they're talking about it. Listen very intently, because they're going to talk to you about what they like about the most, right? And then when they get through into the conversation, you could say things like, well, so how would you install this server, and what kind of things do you need to, what kind of aspects need to be taken into thought before performing an installation? And then they're just going to keep opening up because they're passionate, and they like to share their expertise with people who are genuinely interested. The last one is informational interviews. This is only something I started recently in early 2024. I've only done it a few times. I had heard lots of advice from people in the past, and I didn't buy into it, and I should have. But through some informational interviews, I was introduced to someone who was very passionate about legal operations. And she ended up inviting me to join her community, which is a community of other people who have who are participating in parts or have had experience in job aspects that touch into the legal ops community. And if you ever look into it, legal ops actually touches almost every single profession out there in the world. So I'm very curious, what are some examples you have? What are some of your thoughts on what we've been talking about so far? Leave them down below in the comments. Next, I'd just like to share this slide. You can pause it and take notes or take a screenshot. These are 3 different tips for talking in terms of other people's interests: active listening, ask open-ended questions. I like this example, actually, I've highlighted here. Instead of asking yes or no questions, inquire about their experiences, opinions, and preferences. And the 3rd tip is to find common ground. So that's going to conclude our commentary review here for Chapter 5. It's our 8th episode. Again, if you want to actually hear the full reading of the chapter, go back and look for the red thumbnail videos, and in the description you'll see it talk about this chapter that we're discussing right now. So just in conclusion, I'd like to review with you what we've been talking about for this particular chapter: how to interest people, talk in terms of the other person's interests. And just a review of what we've studied up to date. This is part 2, 6 ways to make people like you. And we are now on principle number 5, talk in terms of the other person's interests. On this slide, you can see principles 1, become genuinely interested in other people. Principle number 2, smile. Number 3, a person's name is to that person the sweetest and important sound in any language. And number 4, be a good listener. Encourage others to speak about themselves. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to add your comments. Thank you.